Quinn of Quinnovation, but I'm also a member of the Internet Time Alliance, and with my colleagues Harold Jarkey and Charles Jennings, and Jane Hart, who couldn't, whose internet connection wouldn't support the Blab. It's an experiment. We're trying it out. Got to keep testing new things, but she's participating in the side chat, so she's with us in spirit. I want to give thanks to David Kelly for the eLearning Guild for setting this up and making this opportunity to have a memory of Jay Cross. And we're going to take some turns and tell some stories and bring people in and have them share their memories. But first, I'd like Charles and Harold to take a chance and introduce themselves and make this a bit of a conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Clark. Hello, everybody. I'm Charles Jennings. Working out of England mostly, but part of the Internet Time Alliance. And again, I just echo Clark's welcome to everyone here and thank the eLearning Guild for organizing this, and really look forward to hearing as many reflections around Jay the man, Jay the e-learning and informal learning expert as possible in the time that we have. Harold.
Hi, everyone. Harold Jarkey from the East Coast of Canada. I guess that makes me the token Canadian at Internet Time Alliance. I'm the guy who's 4 hours between everybody else, with our 8-hour time difference between California and the UK. Thanks again to Dave and the eLearning Guild. It's wonderful, and I see a lot of people here who we all know. So it's great to have the community together, and really look forward to connecting and remembering and sharing our experiences.
So to kick off, Jay was such a fascinating guy, and one of the things that happened, so he wrote his book, Informal Learning, and which was really a game changer, a landmark in the field, and he was out promoting it, and he realized he was talking about people working together and was going around talking alone, and that's what prompted him to pull us together and as the Internet Time Alliance. And it was a wonderful experience to be able to learn with and from people like Charles and Harold and Jane and Jay. And so it was just a sample of his, compassion. And the thing that amazed me is so I've had the opportunity and the honor, if unfortunate one, to attend memorials for Jay in Berlin and then also here in the Bay Area. And the breadth of people he touched and reached and offered opportunities to, he was so open and willing to share that it was just a real pleasure to be around him. There were a lot of facets to him, and you're going to hear a number of them. But that was one of the ones that struck me most, is just his welcoming, his openness, and his compassion. And, I'm sure that's my recollection of the experience. And the way he shared and brought us together with the opportunity to share was just fabulous. And I want to hear from you guys, your thoughts.
Well, I have a similar feeling about Jay, in that he encompassed other people. He brought other people in very much, and to a certain extent, I think that was reflected in his openness, and his openness to all sorts of things, particularly his openness to feedback was really phenomenal. I've not come across many people who are as open to feedback as Jay was, and that was really reflected in this last book he was working on, in the Real Learning book, where he would push out. In fact, his openness to feedback was almost too much for people, because he'd push something out and he'd get feedback and he'd change it and he'd push it out again, asking for more and more. And that sort of reflected an impatience that he had. And Jay was an impatient man because he had things to do, but he was also an incredible intellect. One of the things that really reside with me around Jay, he was a true Renaissance man, in that his knowledge and deep knowledge covered philosophy, psychology, history. Go anywhere in the world with Jay, he will have read up about it. He'd tell you about it. He'd tell you about it before he got there. He also had an incredible it was a reading machine. I don't know, but I think all of us have experienced that. Jay was probably, one of the most widely read people you could meet, and he'd say to us, I've just got this book, and a day later he'd be telling you all about it because he read it. He had this pretty broad grasp of ideas and concepts, and then this depth across this broad landscape. And so for me, Jay encompassed that Renaissance man approach, and I think that was reflected in lots of things. Harold, what are yours?
Well, yeah, Jay and I worked together a lot in the past 10 years or so. And what was interesting today is we're testing out this technology. I worked with Jay, I think it was around 2005-06, and we were doing the informal unlearning workshops. And of course, we had to do it Jay's way, which was always interesting. And we would test out a new piece of technology every time that we ran one of these workshops. And that quite often that wouldn't work, and we'd have to have the backup one. And we actually went through 3 different systems one time, running it kind of as we are here, when we're checking to see what the different people, and we had participants in about a half a dozen countries who were plugging in on this. And we were flying a little bit by the seat of our pants, but it was really always exciting because Jay had all these ideas and said, let's try this out, let's do this, let's check those kinds of things. And he was willing to test things out, and he was willing to fail. I think that I remember doing a presentation in Vegas, and we decided to do it very differently. We had a few hundred people in the audience, and it was a session. We were talking about informal learning particularly. It was just after his book had come out, and we got completely different feedback from people. Some people came to us afterwards and said it was the best presentation they'd ever witnessed, and other people said that they wanted their money back, and it was the worst one that they'd ever seen. And that was kind of the way that that Jay was, because again, he was not a middle of the road kind of guy. Probably the Internet Time Alliance was created in 2009, and it was in 2010 that we were in Berlin together. Jay had got me to this conference with the European Monitoring Commission in Potsdam, and then there was a few days before Online Educa, and that was Jay. He was always connecting, so he invited me got me invited to this thing in Potsdam. Just as I'm looking at the people across the top here, I met Marcia through Jay, I met Jerry through Jay, I met Eileen through Jay. I think I met most of these people through Jay, which is incredible. But this time in Berlin, what Jay wanted to do was that he again do something different, and we were going to take a day and we were going to shoot these little vignettes, video. About the themes that Online Educa was going to be doing, and they were posted, and you can still find some of them online, about informal learning, social learning, PKM, and things like that. And as I mentioned to the folks in Berlin, is that we were running around doing this with, and Paul Simbeck-Hampson was with us, the Working Smarter Field Book, another project that Jay basically did by himself with a little bit of input from us. And we were taking pictures of it in all these different places, like at Max Planck's statue. And we wound up in the Pergamon Museum. And Jay says, yeah, this is the perfect place here, the gates of Babylon and stuff, and we got to do a video. And so he says, okay, Harold, we're going to do it, shoot, I'm going to talk to you, and you're going to tell me about PKM. I think I had 30 seconds notice, right? And so, okay, here we go. And as we're doing that, the guards come and start escorting us out. And anyway, luckily, everything ended fine, and we got these things. The videos were done. We did other ones in different places. We were kicked out of the German Film Museum for filming inside the museum, because you're not allowed to film in the German Film Museum, which was kind of the way things work with Jay. Always an adventure, and usually finishing up with a glass of beer or wine or two. Boy, had lots of really good memories,
and lots of good bottles of wine as well.
Yes. Oh,
that is true, and good beers and good food. He loved life.
Only the best.
And that's what Jane told me she wanted to share, was that he just was such a zest for life. life's too short not to eat well and drink well and have fun. And he was always seeking out. He loved going to museums and things. And I think, what you were saying, Charles, that, he was, and Harold, that he's willing to take willing to take feedback, and he loved to take chances, and take risks. Then that's because he was such a learner. And in fact, he was, internet time, he was really fascinated about the notion of time, but he would continually try to learn things. And in fact, that I showed his informal learning book, his latest work that he was working on and had just finished, this Real Learning book, was all about how do you learn to learn. And he lived that. And he really did. And then he tried to come to study it and figure it out and help other people do that as well. And I think that was a really lovely legacy he's leaving us. And he thought of it as a companion piece to informal learning and real learning. And I think that's a real contribution that can live on. Really, what we should look to do, if you guys have anything more to say, otherwise, I'd like to start bringing in some people. And for the listeners, we've queued up some people we think were, as Harold was mentioning, people that Jay connected us to and were our connectors. And Marcia Connor has been deeply involved in the learning field for years. She wrote a really lovely intro and has run conferences and advised people. And welcome, Marcia.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here. As you all have said, Jay would have loved this technology as he introduced us to so many different things. But most importantly, he invited us to try things out, to wing it, to figure it out as we went along. I have a big memory to share, but I want to share a smaller one, which is that Jay's the one who got me into blogging. And I'm not going to say it was so late in the process. I guess if you're starting to blog now, it's so late. But at the time, it wasn't that I didn't appreciate other people who were blogging. It was that I felt like I had to do it right, or that there was a specific way to approach the technology or the learning or whatever it is that he was so excited about. But his perspective was by learning, by doing, by trying, by playing, by goofing off, by making horrible errors in front of as many people as possible. That's when we will really have the true magic. And so I appreciate that more than anything else. Somewhere I have that first blog, right? I dedicated that to him, and thanks. But the biggest memory, the one that probably will stick with me in front of all the rest, is that I was fairly new to heading up all of education at PeopleSoft in 1997. And I received a phone call from someone I'd never heard of before, this Jay Cross person. In hindsight, I don't even remember where he got my phone number or what the connection was made there. If one of you knows, I would love to hear it. And early in 1998, we went to a little Thai restaurant in the East Bay. And he was very worked up, as Jay tended to get at times. And he was very worked up because all the education pundits were all excited about this notion of e-commerce for education. And for somebody you don't know in a small restaurant you've never been to before, it was a little unusual. That was very, very vivid memory. I can even remember where I sat for that reason. And he said, they've got it all wrong. This isn't about monetizing commerce for the education department. That's just not interesting. That's not useful. But what the opportunity we have in front of us is for all of us to be able to use this technology to be learning all the time. And as we all know, he wasn't talking about training. He wasn't talking about formal education. He wasn't talking about higher ed. He was talking about the experience and the life that we live with other people in the moment, how it worked. And I remember that part of the conversation where he said, and we'll call it e-learning. And we made a big sort of to-do about the fact that we wouldn't call it e-training, because that really was something else. That's not what he meant. And while we now know that there are other people who are using the term e-learning about that same time, I don't know of anybody else who was talking about it so loudly or so vocally, but with such passion and such interest. And when I look now at the entire e-learning world, which really has become in large part the e-training world, I just wish that we could have Jay on a big megaphone saying, no, don't go down the wrong path. this is really about us all learning and being and doing together all of the time. And for that, I think we're all both appreciative, but really excited about still the prospect ahead of us, and to be able to be learning together all the time as we are now. So that will be with me forever. And I thank you for providing an opportunity to answer this call, most specifically to share the fact that even if you are not the expert in the room, that each person has something to contribute, something to share, something to learn, something to be, something to do, and we can do that together.
That's great.
That's that.
Very much, Marcia. That's absolutely. I think that point about the e-training, e-learning. I think Jay was almost into e-being more than anything else. About sort of using technology to do things which made you better people and expanded your horizons and so on. So that's a wonderful, wonderful reminiscence. Thanks very much.
Yes, I remember Jay always said that Marcia was his muse.
Yes. Absolutely.
It was probably mostly because when he would come to me with one of these big ideas, like the Informal Learning book, for example, I took him up at his word, and I would say, that's really not a good idea. Let's think about this a little longer. Let's push back a little bit. And then he would come up with the next revision, and it would be fantastic. But sometimes those first ones were not just rough. They were, right, Chris Clark shakes his head. They were on a whim. They weren't necessarily so thought through. And as his editor, actually, for a magazine for a number of years, I remembered very, very vividly some of those rough first takes. But when you really sculpted and molded, you could realize how incredible wisdom there was deep in there. But it sometimes did take a few of those. And if you call him a muse for that, I'm not sure that's what I would call it. But at least somebody who had the courage to push back and say, let's try that again.
Sure. Yeah. And he would take it. I similarly with the Informal Learning book heard it. So thank you much, Marcia. We're going to free up the slot for somebody else. Thank you so much for joining us. And his first attempts could be, but as Charles said, he took feedback and he got better. So if Laura Overton worked with Jay years ago at SmartForce, I think. And is now doing Towards Maturity, but she has known him longer than most of us. And there she is. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Uh-oh. We don't hear you.
Audio.
We've had a few of those. Yes.
Well, if you can do sign language, go ahead.
Yeah. So did you? Oh, he's gone. So
we can maybe try to get Laura in again, just to check the audio.
Mm-hmm. If she can try again. And this is, we're living a la Jay. Fly on the by the pants. See how it goes. I don't know if she knows about the little, giving permission to your microphone and camera with, at least in Firefox. It just worked in Chrome, but I don't know. If it didn't, what would you do about it? There didn't seem to be ways to control the devices. If you've got a monitor and a computer, how do you pick the camera out of each? And she's not making it.
We have Dave doing his magic stuff in the background, right?
I'm sure he is.
Mark's coming in.
Mark.
Morning, or whatever time it is you're in.
Good evening, Mark. Yeah.
That's right. So, I remember a few things about Jay. One in particular is he was one of the first persons I've never been an instructional designer. I've worked in learning and development for 15 plus years, but he was one of the first people I met and really related to at a conference, because he was saying the things that I was feeling, like, why are we going down these same kind of paths? Why are we doing the same kinds of things? And I remember we were at Disney, and he won a toy somehow, a little green turtle. And he and I had been talking, and my son was probably 2 years old at the time. And he said, I don't really need this. Do you want, here, give this to your son. And I remember coming home with it. It's little, like that big, coming home and being like, you take care of this. Jay Cross gave you this turtle. And So that meant a lot. I also remember when I needed to bring in the biggest minds I could find to talk about blogs and wikis at the time, because we didn't call it social media or Web 2.0, and I was working at Booz Allen. Basically the only phone call I made was to Jay. And within a span of weeks, we had Marcia, Jay, Jerry Michalski, Eugene Eric Kim, David Weinberger, Clay Shirky, and we missed Tim O'Reilly by a hair because of scheduling, in a room with analysts from the CIA talking about essentially informal learning. And that kind of connection has stayed with me absolutely forever. I've also had a lot of great drinks with Jay. That was fun. I always remembered being jealous of and racing to conferences ahead of him to try to get that picture of the registration line before everybody got in it. The guy, I checked, he's got 33,000 photos on Flickr. And I think I take a lot of pictures, and I've got 4,000. Crushing in terms of volume. And I always, I always love that. You're not going to wait for the perfect picture. You're not going to wait for this. Just take it and see what it tells you. And same with the technology. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to work every time, but try it and see what it tells you. And that, and the fact that he can invent a term like e-learning and then disagree with it. That kind of ability to question the canon of our industry is, aside from the personal stuff, that's what I miss the most. Is we need more of that. We absolutely need more of that, and our industry has a tougher fight ahead of it because he's not here to help us anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, no, Mark, I disagree with that. No, that was it. His pictures, and he would also shoot videos. He'd just say, "Hey, Mark, tell me this," and talk about this for a minute, and he'd pop it in his blog or whatever. He was really experimental, and it was great.
The production value is getting it done, right?
Yep, good is good and better than perfect because it's done.
Exactly. Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mike.
I should introduce, as a bit of your background, Mark, Defense Acquisition University and now at Amazon, as I understand it. But he's been involved in the field. I remember you early on and very eager about social coming from your anthropology background. So thanks for sharing. Appreciate that.
Small scale enterprises, DoD, little stuff.
Yeah.
But, thanks for the opportunity, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing, Mark. That's really nice.
Take care.
And Aaron Silvers, who's been pushing SCORM and the next API in a variety of guises. Aaron, you're on.
Thanks, guys. Jay's law still affects me, and I don't tend to think about Jay in terms of like his impact on the field. I think about him as just the person he was and the impact that he personally had on me as a mentor. I met him in person for the first time, I think it was around 2010 in San Francisco at DevLearn. And he was kind enough to invite a whole bunch of Twitter friends that he had to his home. That's where I met Charles for the first time. That's where I met everybody for the first time. I remember sitting there with Karine Pagano in his backyard, looking at this giant redwood tree, shooting up from his backyard, in plain view of his office, and just marveling at like how he organized just his study, just looking at the way that the man worked, and how he chose to do it, to operate. And I just kind of wondered, like, what are we doing here? Like we don't. He's playing at a whole other level than I could. That at the time I could comprehend. And I remember distinctly the end of that conference where there was a panel with a bunch of us as a closing kind of keynote, and Jay jumping up out of nowhere, basically like calling me out for talking about design thinking, and then like literally twisting my arm to meet with this group called Overlap in San Francisco in like the very next month. And that was not a cheap airline ticket to buy, but the man was, I had to take the man at his word. Like, that, there was something about how compelling he was in terms of, like, steering people on their path. And because of that, because of his interference, it literally was like an intersection. Like, there is no good reason why Jay Cross would ever want to or need to cross paths with me. I was a tech nerd for lack of any other definition. But he did step in, and as a result, I learned from him how to be a pioneer. I don't know that I'm ever going to be that pioneer that he was. I don't know that anybody could. I don't know, he's one of a kind. But he taught me how to lead, and he taught me how to experiment, and he taught me how to take chances. And the person I am today is very much in large part because of Jay Cross just stepping in. And I miss him greatly. I don't know what else I can say about it.
Yeah, well, we all do, Aaron. We all do. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Exactly, Aaron. That sharing of himself and just connecting you, saying, from what you're saying, you need to know about this, and he knew so much, and he was so willing to share it. It was really nice. I was just thinking, as you're talking about the personal effect, he sounds like a Jedi master, We were all Padawans.
He very much was, and I didn't mean to go making everybody cry, but it's going to be there's just those are going to be tough shoes to ever fill.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for sharing. That was really nice.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. Jedis were a little too ascetic for him.
We have Laura back. Laura, do you have sound?
Do I have sound?
We certainly do.
Yes.
Yay! Oh, thanks for waiting for me. It's been amazing to listen to what everyone's been saying about Jay, and I was really fortunate to work with him when we both worked at CBT Systems just before it became SmartForce, the e-learning company. And what I remember most about Jay at our company events was his bright, dynamic shirts that he used to wear to every event that we attended, and I was this prim proper person from the UK, and he was there dazzling us with his bright shirts and his bright ideas and his bright thinking, and everything about Jay was always inspiring in the sense of his the concept of e-learning not just being an online course, but the way that we communicate, the way that we connect. It was so important and so fundamental. And I think when our organisation became SmartForce, the vision for change and what technology could bring to the learning process and to us as individuals has always been something that stayed with me in my whole career, and I was really grateful to be part of that early journey. And if I shoot on a little bit more into what I've been doing over the last few years with Jay, is working with you, Charles, as well, at Online Educa, working to bring the business perspective into that amazing conference. And Jay's ideas are always about, let's undo this, let's unconference it, let's write an unbook, let's do things differently. And I think that's been so inspiring for me. And I think working with him on new and fresh ways of bringing people together, getting people to exchange ideas in the formal setting, because conference is a formal setting, but shaking it up and just giving people new contacts, new connections. And I think that's something that we've really benefited in working with him and bringing something fresh. And, I agree with you, Clark, when you were saying earlier, I think he's left us so many resources to pick the baton up with. His Real Learning book, had that great privilege of being able to read that in the early stages and kind of compare it with what we were finding out about learners directly. And he was listening, he was changing. But that book is a manual, not just for individuals, but it's a manual for every one of us in learning and development to actually pick up what he was doing and to apply it for ourselves. And, you know, in one sense, you know, we miss him deeply, but he's stepped out of the way, but he's equipped us with all the things that we need to do to kind of take that vision on and to take it forward. So he's been an inspiration for me for the last few decades. It's too long to mention, but I am so thrilled at all the resources that I've got on my shelves, and all the contacts that I've made through him that will really help me to kind of move forward in that vision as well. So Jay, thank you so much for everything.
It was really lovely, Laura. And yeah, from the early days and at the memorial, his business partner in Omega, which he was in from 1979 to 1999, I think before SmartForce, shared pictures and stories. But one of the things, those people like Eileen and stuff who live in the Bay Area know he regularly dressed up in Santa suits. Jerry was reminding us that he would dress up in Santa suits at Christmas times. And there was a picture of him for the very earliest days of Omega. And there he was in a Santa suit. But yeah, his spirit was big. He left us a lot of presents. And to as you said, pick up the baton. And that's a really nice thing. We shouldn't just remember him and stop. We need to continue to be incorporating his thoughts, his legacy into our actions, so we're carrying the industry forward in the way he would have liked. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. That's really nice. And
I also think, Laura, you and I worked closely with Jay for a number of years at Online Educa Berlin. And he did push us. And actually, sometimes you had to hold it sometimes too far. Sometimes you had to almost put your arms around him and say, hold on, Jay, you know, that's great, but this isn't going to work. We're going to have to sort of roll that back a little bit. And again, you know, everyone who's ever attended Online Educa will have memories of Jay sitting there, as always, right at the front of the big plenary sessions, camera in hand, you know, banging off photographs, always one to challenge and ask questions and so on. And I think that challenging was really important. Actually, it was part of what Jay was. He pushed people out as far as they could go and sometimes further. And that was great.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, in the Marlena bar with that glass of
Absolutely.
wine.
Yeah, I don't think Jay ever sat at the back of the room.
Yeah.
Always up the front.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because he was hard of hearing. He often said, I sit at the front because I can't hear properly, but he just wanted to be right at the front there, to be sort of, to be right close to the action. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Laura, thanks very much. That was really great.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. And I think we're getting Jerry Mikulski next. He's an associate now, but he has been involved. He was working with Esther Dyson at Adventures, and has just an amazing connection of people around the world. And here he is.
Thanks, Lark. I really love how this community is holding Jay. It's a lovely thing to behold. I like, it's very international. It's very Jay. It's very natural. So I'm appreciating this a lot. My first favorite memory of Jay was when he came up. I was a neighbor for a while. I lived in the Berkeley Hills, about 6 blocks from him, and he came to a holiday party years ago, and he liked his wine and so forth. So my memory is of a very tipsy Santa sort of weaving his way down the walkway, leaving our place to walk back down to his place, and so it was really kind of cute, and just went on from there time after time. He was an excellent thought partner. There were many a times when we would sit down in the hills and record one another on videos or record each other together. He was a gentle provocateur in the sense that he wasn't the firebrand. He wasn't someone up on stage saying, here, listen to me. But rather, he was busy saying things that were hard for some people to hear and important for a lot of people to hear, but saying them in a playful, gentle way. And then I also think of him as a gourmand. A gourmand of food and wine, of course, but also a gourmand of people and of ideas, meaning that he really had an appreciation for them and loved bringing them together and loved getting them to different places. And I know that I, as many people I think on this call, ended up in places I never thought I would have ended up in because of Jay. He brought me into things quietly, gently, into things that are really memorable for me at this point, where I look back and I'm grateful for them. So I think of Jay as playful, curious, and generous. And I'm really grateful for the time that he spent on this little blue marble with us.
Absolutely, Jerry, and yeah, I'm not sure he was always a gentle provocateur. Sometimes he get quite frustrated, and you and him really had a nice synergy in terms of both wide interests and the ability to play off one another in a very elegant way. And I got to know so many of the people who were talking today through him, including you, as others have recited. And I love that notion of him being a gourmand of people and ideas as much as food and drink. I think that was a lovely way to characterize it.
It was really nice. Thank you. Thank you all for doing this.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank
and
you,
Jay
Jerry.
had great respect for you, Jerry. He often talked about you and Kevin Wheeler and various others. He obviously had great respect for, people he worked closely with across the Bay Area and across the world, really. So, your name often came up in conversations with Jay when you weren't present.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that.
Not at all.
I talked about him and you guys a lot too.
That's great. Okay, Jerry, thank you very much.
Yeah. And, as we're rotating people through, some people we've already tried to get in here and had trouble sharing. So Eileen Clegg, who knew him through NextNow and a long time, worked with us, couldn't make it in. And Sahana Chapadaway, I'm not sure I pronounced that right, in India had technical troubles. But we do have Ellen Wagner, who's known Jay for a long time and is doing amazing stuff with predictive analytics right now. But Ellen, thanks.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Excellent.
Loud and clear. Great.
This is just a quick tribute. I apologize for loud construction noise here, but I couldn't jump in and not acknowledge some of the adventures that I have had with Jay and that we've all had with Jay. I mean, Clark, you and I have certainly had our times through Berlin, and I was smiling listening to everyone recounting their online Educa experiences. Because I am out here in the California area, I did have the good fortune of having a chance to actually spend non-conference time with Jay, wandering through gardens, speculating about all kinds of new and different things, being challenged. Oh my gosh, that man challenged me about the analytics work I was doing. And to good effect, because he'd call the question, why are you profiling people? Why are you doing this type of thing? And of course, I would always find myself sort of having to step back a minute and go, well, why am I doing this thing? But it was great, warm, and as you're saying, not particularly gentle, but big hugs, lots of love. I don't know. I still can't get my head wrapped around the fact that I'm not going to call him up and wander on down to our favorite Indian restaurant and try to figure out how we can change the world again. So I just want to thank all of you for this and let all of us just sort of reflect on the fact that this guy managed to change our world and all the better for it. So I thank you for this chance. That's Clark, I appreciate so much how you've been standing in front of crowds and trying to say things and keep it together. It's hard.
And failing, but
Well, it's hard to lose a friend. It's hard to lose a friend.
Hard. And I was remembering, so Jerry, who we just heard from, you and I were brought to Abu Dhabi as well by Jay and some other people.
That's right. And all you guys went off to lunch with the minister, and I needed to stay back at the hotel because I was a girl and it was Friday. And I remember when Jay he watched to see how I would react because this was not expected. As all you folks know, sometimes I don't necessarily keep my opinions to myself, but I was so well behaved that he complimented me. But I do remember making some type of a snide remark about, well, I hope you enjoyed your camel. So
it was a very interesting event to have lunch with the Sheikh, and the fact that you couldn't go was truly a tragedy. But
I think it gave you all something to giggle about because you knew that you could tease me for at least 4 more days.
Yeah, but I think we were more united in a strange environment. We clung together because it's the best way to cope. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we had some adventures wanting the Weihnachtsmarkt in Berlin, but he like with Jerry, he would mention you and all the people we're hearing from at other times because you were prominent in his thoughts of what he cared about and thought was important.
Well, he helped me going back to the Macromedia and Adobe days when we were looking at, in fact, I do remember launching certain products about the time that Jay had written a certain informal learning book. And it gave us both a chance to try to get the word out and to help support each other's trying to do things differently. And, so ever since he was back coming up with that e-learning word back when we used to go down to the SRI meetings back in the first of the .coms. So it's been a while.
That's right. Yeah, he makes stuff happen, and we haven't talked about how he organized the e-learning forum in the Bay Area to get people together in the field and such. So it was quite. He didn't just think and talk; he made things happen, and that was very good.
Well, and the network too, Clark. Remember, this is also when we met Wayne Hodgins, when we met Marcia Connor. I met Charles around the same time. It was. Again, the whole notion of the virtual salon, the in-person salon, getting us together and making us think.
Really nice. Thanks for sharing and for reminding us.
It's really great.
Thanks, Alan.
Do we have anybody else queued up? So many memories. He touched people, and he was so, he didn't have really any biases, I think, except against ignorance or stupidity. And ignorant, you don't know any better, but stupidity, when you know better and you still do the wrong thing, I think that's when he wasn't very gentle, if you weren't willing to learn.
Or people not willing to learn new things, sticking with the tried and the true. I think that bothered him. Is like, just go out and try it. And Jay would always, push. And I know he did the same thing with me many times. Was like, Harold, get off your butt and you're going to go do this thing here, right? And do it now. And I said, well, I'm not ready. Yes, you are. It was the whole notion when Jay decided that I was going to be the chairman of the Internet Time Alliance. And I was kind of like, I said, well, why me? He said, because you need it the most.
Indeed, and that he was a fabulous, so he was a colleague to work together with. He was a friend to many of us, but he was also a mentor, as we talked about, and he helped people along. I don't think I ever questioned him. If he said do it, okay. Always up for something new, and he made it safe to just willing to share. In some sense, we can. Somebody wants to have a short memory.
Please join.
We'll see. Is that I'm looking at the numbers here. So we have 22 registered and about 145 tuned in right now. So a nice little cross section of the network.
Kevin Thorne or Gunnar Brickner or. However we want to go.
For anybody who's just watching, all you have to do is just plug into the open seat.
Nice idea, Jerry. Maybe just have a moment of silence for Jay. And my thanks not only to David Kelly and the Guild for hosting this, and to my colleagues in Internet Time Alliance, and to all the people who've spoken, but to everybody else who's watching and paying attention. And I really appreciate your interest in a guy we really think had something to say. And as I've said elsewhere, I hope you guys get a chance to know more about him. Look at his prolific work and his contributions, and
there's still, there's so much more work to do. I know, like with me, is that Jay leaving was impetus to work harder, to try new things, seize the day. I think we can all kind of do that. Is that all right? I mean, if you actually thought that what he was doing was right, at least one of the many things that he did, is take it, run with it, do something with it.
I think that was a way Jay
Okay.
Sorry, Harold. I think that was a way Jay worked in lots of ways. As he opened up new avenues, and he often left strands hanging. So he wasn't a man who wanted to have nice, tight closure on things. He opened up opportunities, opened up ideas, and then left things hanging for others to pick them up and for people to try different stuff. And I think that was really important. That was part of his, I think, what the value he brought to our profession was doing that, was almost taking the scales off eyes and saying, okay, this is one way to look at it. Here's another way to look at it. How do you want to look at it? And here's some ideas from me. And he'd throw things into the pond and the ripples would go out.
Yes, I remember how he always, or many times, he would go back to the neuroscience, and he would say that remember that you actually remember things that are not completed. So if I explain, and that he would just sort of stop halfway through something and then just leave it, say, because you'll actually remember this moment more than if I nicely conclude it.
Often recounted the story of the Russian psychologist working at the Humboldt University who studied the waiters in the restaurant across the way, to tell this story about the fact that we remember incomplete things. And as you say, then he would stop in the middle and people would look at each other and he'd sit down and that'd be the end of it. Everyone would wonder what the hell's going on here. Yeah.
Well, that was him putting into practice. Remember, he also would say, he'd heard that if you're told something's controversial, you process it better, remember it better. So he'd say that at the beginning, I'm going to say stuff that's controversial. And then he'd go through his presentation and, just in the interest and the hope that it would help people learn better as he went on. And Jane, who is one of the Internet Time Alliance, but for technical reasons couldn't be on, she's suggesting that people put their message, their take-home message, their message from Jay, their learnings, and pop them into this chat here for those, what's your biggest message from Jay? And I really appreciate, that's great, the way he's popped it into the other pane there. And somehow I feel like the Brady Bunch. I'm looking down at Harold and over at Charles. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if everybody's screens are arranged the same way we're seeing it, but thanks for, there's already some great ones. Seize the day, try new stuff, try other things, exactly. Mark, we need that image from whoever the artist is who has that, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm loving these.
That was Jay to a T. He didn't bother about polishing the edges. Just get and do it, and sort it out, and take the feedback, and sort it out, and get it better next time. Absolutely.
A good spirit, and he was remarkably comfortable in his skin, and that's a real gift.
Jerry. Yeah.
NSFW. Yeah, FDI.
Well, Laura's got a good point about he didn't leave us empty-handed. Is that there's a whole bunch more. That there's lots of stuff to do more stuff with.
Sure. Absolutely, that's really nice. Mark Britz, hey, really good stuff he left us, and I think thanks, Jane. That was a fabulous idea to get people to. To keep sharing their thoughts and messages and take-homes in the chat. Really nice messages, all of them good actioning, So
I think we can sort of see if we can bring Dave back, see if there's anybody else who wants to. We don't have to go to the top of the hour.
Mm-hmm.
We can leave it unfinished as Jay would.
There we go.
Yeah. I think the one thing that we should just mention to everyone here is that Jay's last book, the book he was just completing when he died. Thanks very much, Clark. We've just done a little bit of tidying up on it because it was essentially complete, and that's now available and can be purchased. So that's as I say, the last book that he was working on.
Yeah, and thanks to Clark and Jane for doing the lion's share of editing that, getting it in the right format and all those other things.
Jane did
and all
the hard yard.
And all the proceeds.
So.
And all the proceeds are going back to Jay's family, right?
Yep.
On that the Real Learning.
To his wife and son. So. Yep.
And where do people buy it through? What's the easiest way to get at it? It's just through Real Learning, is it? Or
it's I go to Lulu and do a search for Real Learning, and you should get a hold of it.
Fine.
I don't have the link, or I'd pop it into the chat.
We'll put the links into social media and so on, so that people can find it more easily. Yeah.
I like Jerry's little quote there: "Small nudges loosely placed." Well said.
Well, we can all keep doing that. So I think, again, my thanks to everybody. Charles, Harold, Jane, all the people who spoke, Dave, Kelly, and the Guild for doing this. And it's been recorded. It will be archived. When we know the link, we'll share it.
So Dave, as our host, do you want to come back in, have anything to say?
Didn't think there was a need to, so
okay. All right. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
And,
thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.